We are still waiting for some people to join, so we'll start in another 2-3 minutes.
Hi.
Hi, Mohan. We'll just wait for a bit. I think we're waiting for the rest to join.
Venika, pause the recording. We'll start it once we start. Is the live stream okay?
Waiting for the rest to join.
Yeah, the live stream is going.
Venika, pause the recording. We'll start it once we start.
Morning, folks. Don't look all that serious.
Morning.
Good morning.
Venkat, can you just tally if all the teams are here?
Hi, Vishwanath.
Hello.
Hi. We'll just wait 2 more minutes, I think, to just get everybody on. People are still joining, and then we'll get started. Hema, just checking if the CE sir is also able to join.
Yeah, I'm calling.
All the teams are here, I believe. The last team is just joining. Venkat, can you confirm?
Yeah, we are the final team. Yeah, we have all the teams in. We're good to go.
Wait, Sophia, can you check if all the judges are here? Then we can start.
Yeah, you can start. I think CE sir will join in a bit. It's fine. I think we can kickstart. We'll join.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. I'm Aparajita. I'm the co-founder of Philac, and I'm joined by Sobia from Sensing Local and Prithvi from Sensing Local, who've been sort of, helping us and sort of really steering this Urban Revamp Design Challenge. Just wanted to thank you all for participating in this challenge and, giving it so much time. We were really excited to see so many entries for both the sites, for Banaswadi and Dudnakundi, and the kind of energy that Bangalore has. I just wanted to quickly take you through how many entries sort of came in and, how many were shortlisted, etc. So we can move to that. So for Banaswadi, we had 103 teams registered, and I guess there was a lot of excitement around the site because of its unique sort of topography. And finally, 48 teams attended the visioning workshop, and 103 plus participants were there. And thank God all this happened before Omicron really let loose. And then we received 24 proposals finally. And now we have 5 proposals which have been shortlisted, which will be presented today to the jury. So congratulations on getting so far. Today, we'll also be live streaming the entire, program, and we're also recording it because this will also be put to the community for voting over the next week. I also just wanted to quickly introduce you to Venkat and Venika from Philac because they've been really steering this program and, answering all your queries and sort of really organizing this along with Sensing Local. So thank you so much once again, and thank you to the judges for spending your time on the weekend and giving this so much, time. Just in terms of agenda, what we'll do is we are already, well, this is the introduction that I'm doing right now. Then Sensing Local will do the context setting and talk a little bit more about the site so that the teams don't have to do it in their own presentations. Then we will have 2 teams present. We'll have a 15-minute break, and then 3 teams will present. At the end, judges will stay back for a bit to sort of reconcile scores and discuss among themselves, and also discuss next steps. In terms of results, I think we'll take about 2 weeks from now to come back with results, because after the scoring, etc., that will happen today. This will be put to community for vote. So we'll have to go out in the community to sort of get their feedback, etc. So it will take us some time, but we really want their inputs to be there in who the final, winning entries should be. Over to you, Subhya.
Thank you, Aprajita. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. I'd start with introducing our esteemed panel of judges. I'm not sure if Lokesh sir is here yet. Just going to check, but I will introduce him as soon as he comes. But Lokesh sir is the chief engineer of BVMP Projects Department. He is a graduate from IIT Madras and has started his career working at L&T for around 8 years. He's been working in BBMP from 2003 onwards and has worked in a range of departments from stormwater drains, solid waste management to currently, which is BBMP projects. He's also anchored several infrastructure-led projects in the city, ranging from white topping to the more popular Church Street that we all know and really enjoy using in our city and hope to have more of. I also have Himlata, madam, who's from the BBMP Projects Department. She's the executive engineer. She's also going to join Mr. Lokesh during the scoring. Her background has predominantly been in the solid waste management department for almost, I think, 10 to 15 years. And now, of course, into the BBMP Projects Department. So I welcome both of you. We have Mr. Vishwanath. Most probably, I think everyone will probably know him as Zen Rain Man. Definitely someone we've looked up to tremendously in terms of the work that he's been able to do and the movements he's been able to drive in the city. He is the director of Biome Environmental Trust and also an advisor to Biome Environmental Solutions and an advisor to Biome Environmental Trust, which is a Bangalore-based design firm focusing on ecology, architecture, and water. I think some of the most popular projects, apart from the lake rejuvenation development, I think the most ambitious one that we are all looking forward to is the Million Wells program in Bangalore, which aims to actually recharge the groundwater in the city. So we welcome Zen Rain Man. We also have Mohan Rao with us. Mohan Rao is a landscape architect and environmental planner at INDE. Who have been doing a lot of work, in fact, related to landscape, water, and architecture itself. His core expertise has been in environmental design, regional planning, and landscape architecture with a strong focus on sustainable practices in the city. Looking at regional planning, disaster management, heritage conservation, and master planning. I welcome Mohan as well to the panel. Lastly, we have Ankit Bhargava, who's my counterpart at Sensing Local, who's also an architect and urban planner with over 13 years of experience. He has worked predominantly, and I think the strength lies predominantly in system thinking, in breaking down complex systems and actually working towards finding more integrated solutions, as well as on looking at aspects related to participatory planning and design. So with this, I will move ahead with the understanding of the site. The focus of this particular session is to be able to give everyone an idea of the site. The intent is that even the participants who are now going to present need not focus as much on the site analysis, but more on their design solution, because we will lay this down for everyone in common. Regarding the site, both the understanding of the site and in sort of helping us do the citizen participation, I'd really like to give a huge shout out to Banaswadi Rising. The citizen group that is there has really been an anchor for this project and for us to also improve our own understanding of the site in a much more comprehensive manner. So I will definitely like to anyone, I think all the participants as well have gone ahead and taken their contact, troubled them, or rather bombarded them with several questions, which they have been so patient in answering. So a big shout out to Banaswadi Rising. So the site itself is in Banaswadi ward, which is ward number 27. It falls under East Zone. And I think most people know about HRBR layout. So the site itself is actually connecting, is along the Rajakalway that connects Chelakere Lake and Banaswadi Tank. Currently, Banaswadi Tank is defunct. So you'll see that this is the bottom. So this entire red dotted line is what is the site. As a part of the proposal, though the entire stretch that we are looking at is around 900 meter either side of the Rajakalway, the space for detailing it out has been around 410 meters, so that we look at a larger master plan, but really look at detailing our activity at a certain stretch. So here's where you'll see the detail of it. The entire road is predominantly residential, with a few commercial and institutional setups predominantly lying at the crossroads of the Rajakalway. So just to give you sort of an understanding, you have the stormwater drain itself that connects the two tanks, like I said. It has running water during monsoons. Most of the sewage has been curbed. Lokesh sir, who's here, also has been a part of that. We also were hoping to have the stormwater drain department here, but they will be reviewing these proposals after. But they have already curbed a bit of the sewage inflow, as well as the issues related to flooding that happen around the Rajakalway. But there's still certain challenges. There are these narrow bridges that cut across the Rajakalway that are fairly dark, also very easy for anybody to climb on the bridge and just chuck garbage over into the canal as well. So they become these, though they just connect and they're pedestrian connects, which is great, but they also become spots where it's easy for people to dump garbage, urinate, and also crime spots. We have the residential streets again, which are fairly calm streets. They're already, I think a lot of people are already coming here to walk, to jog, to cycle, and to just get in for an evening stroll. A lot of people also come here to learn driving, because it is a fairly calm street. And as you see with the greenery that is there along that stretch, it forms a really beautiful avenue of trees that exist there. On the other end, of course, we have predominantly residential developments, which are G+1, G+2 within that range, some going up to G+3 as well. The green buffer, it's interesting because the Rajakalway on either side has this very nicely protected green buffer, which in certain spots has also been co-opted and by certain residents who have grown fruit trees here, gardens here, and they are maintaining it in a very sort of one-off way in certain spots along the Rajakalway. At the crossroads, which becomes one of the things that we have also taken into account, because here is where predominantly you find the vendors, the convenience stores. So this is basically the spot of visibility for vendors, because a lot of people pass and cut across here. The intent, so this is basically the design brief that was given to the participant, where the intent is to build on the idea of placemaking. The aim is to revamp this defunct buffer space on either side of the Rajakalway, and using the road actually, which currently is actually an urban void, and design it to become more functional and usable by residents of the neighborhood. So there is a strong focus on how it can be used by the neighborhood more than anything else as a space going forward. Hence the placemaking, because there are certain activities that there may be traces of, but that need to be actually designed, or even new activities proposed considering what the residents wanted. So moving into the participatory session. So the way the project itself has rolled out, just to ensure that all of us, everyone actually who's participated in it to do design, there is a base grounding that is done in what people want. And it is not devoid of of the person occupying and using the space. So the participatory sessions were hosted along with all the partner organizations, as well as Banaswadi Rising, particularly Banaswadi Rising, who helped organize it and call people, and we organized it as an event. So there were three things that predominantly happened. We had a site walk where we had residents take groups of 10 to 15 participants for a walk around the site to discuss the issues, challenges. Then we had the interaction with residents, which was predominantly a Q&A session where all the participants after the walk were allowed to just ask multiple questions regarding the site challenges, even probably put in certain aspects to test certain other situations that may be possible, or what has happened in the past, what has been the history of development along the stretch. There's also the vision board. So the vision boards were kept out during this entire duration to capture inputs not only from people who were jogging, walking, people who were living around there, but this time we really put a focus on children because we realized that they were a very, very important group along this stretch who had a lot to say and had a lot to imagine. So that was another very interesting aspect of what happened during the visioning workshop. So we had around 100 plus participants at the site walk who went around. It was quite an immersive walk where a lot of questions were answered. So you see the interaction with the residents. There were, of course, the Q&A session that happened. After that, everyone obviously had time to speak to different residents, get different perspectives. What you're seeing here on the right is right bottom corner is a painting competition we hosted for the children. Again, the idea of the painting competition was to be able to get the kids to reimagine what they would like to see along the canal, and that was put up. There was also a video of stakeholder interviews that was shared with the participants of the competition, where it documented the perspective of residents, vendors, visitors, and auto drivers, the predominant groups that occupied the street. The vision boards on their own were actually where we sort of looked at some prioritization of issues. So it's not only about what issues existed, we wanted to bring that down to where did those issues exist, which was most important to residents in terms of the first priority, second and third priority, and as well as for them to actually give an aspect on the visioning board. So these were the kind of issues that were found on the site, and they were sort of co-located. So you will see ranging from garbage dumping to dog poop to flooding, drain management, sewage effluent, smell from the Rajakalu way, illegal parkings, speeding vehicles, theft and crime. So all of these exist along the entire stretch. We also looked at doing an activity mapping to understand what do people come here for, and probably at what time of the day do they actually come here. So you do realize that the two sort of highlights that came in were that children use the street as a place to play, walk and jog in the mornings and the evenings. And we also understood that for kids, it was not very safe because you had speeding vehicles. So even despite the fact that the space gets used, that is a challenge. The other thing is a lot of senior citizens that are using it also for the morning walks, and some of them are actually maintaining the gardens that are there. So coming to the priorities, so you see that garbage dumping, dog poop was definitely a big priority in the area, even in terms of the first priority that was there. This was also divided by people who were residents of the streets to the people who were visitors to the street. So that entire categorization was done because the street is not only used by residents, it's actually used by people from all over the neighborhood who come here to walk, jog, etc. So you see that in the top, of course, in terms of first priority, you have garbage dumping, you have no seating, public and public spaces or play spaces that were there. You have the issue of sewage and effluents and smell from the Rajakalu way. This sort of seems to be almost similar for both residents and non-residents in the neighborhood. This was actually the vision for the neighborhood by the children, and I think the interesting aspect is they got to express. They also had a sort of explained their ideas to everybody around there in terms of what they wanted. But it ranged from very interestingly to seeing swans, the possibility of seeing swans in the Rajakalu way, to seeing the sunset from the bridges, which I think was a very interesting, perspective that kids had. The vision board itself was also given to people, again, residents and non-residents. where they were asked to say what would they like to see the street as a space for. So from it already has a very sort of interesting serene space, but they're looking at aspects related to safety, that the fact that they should not cause any nuisance. They're looking at it for a place for kids. They're looking at it as a lung space that continues to thrive. They also look at it as a socio and eco-friendly place that could also help people build awareness. So there were a lot of things around biodiversity, ecology also that were raised by a lot of people. So that's pretty much brings me to the end of the presentation. I will move ahead into now the design presentation. I think if Venkat would have shared the scoring sheet, so just sort of, Venkat, if you can just confirm that.
Yes. Share it with them.
Yeah, and if the judges can confirm, if the judges can please confirm if they've received the sheets.
Yeah, we've received it.
Yeah, so it's just, you can do the scoring towards the end as well. Hema just checking, is C sir also here? Yes, I can see Lokesh. So
yes, I am here.
Yes,
Morning.
sir. Morning, sir. So, so sir, you've received the sheet as well, right? Hema
Yes,
and you. Okay. So the, I mean, this is just for the judges. You can probably do the scoring if you want, even towards the end of seeing all the proposals, or as it is. But there's a tab that is there with your names where you can sort of fill that in. Okay, so now Venika, on to you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much for that, Sobhya. Team 763, I believe you're ready and you can share your screen. And participants, you can always keep your camera on while presenting. That helps us visualize you as well.
Okay.
Sorry, just one more add-on. Thanks for the reminder, Prajita. Just for the judges as well. In case there's also a column for comments, I would definitely urge you to also highlight certain, even if there are certain elements that are interesting within each proposal, it would be interesting to highlight, as BBMP would also want to look at elements across proposals and may not be just one proposal as well. So yes, over to you, sorry.
Okay. Hello and Happy New Year. We are a team of architects that work in Bengaluru, and this is our proposal, Let's Make a Great Community. We kindly ask everyone to ensure their microphones are muted. Thank you.
Bengaluru is an attractive city. It has great weather, beautiful lakes and gardens, and is a place of opportunity for people of all ages, genders, and backgrounds. Because of this, it's one of the fastest growing cities in India with a huge demand for infrastructure. An image like this one shows how Bengaluru, on the right side, experiences far more migration than other cities.
The sudden growth has overwhelmed the city. Issues such as garbage dumping, flooding, broken footpaths due to constant construction, and a widening gap in economic classes are common sights. Unfortunately, issues like these are all factors that negatively impact the welfare of communities and citizens.
So how should this diverse city solve its problems? It's simple, together through this diversity in a collaborative, compassionate, creative framework.
Let's see what's happening at 8th Main Banaswadi today. In this road section, you can see the Rajakalve in the middle and the buildings and roads on either side. Please look at the left half of this diagram. Firstly, excessive construction has reduced our groundwater levels and its capacity to recharge. Because of this, stormwater is forced into the Rajakalve, causing uncontrollable flooding. Secondly, garbage is dumped along the streets and inside the canal. This creates foul smells and contaminates our water systems. Waste is also diverted to landfills, causing the same issues elsewhere, but at a much larger scale. Finally, a lack of footpaths and lighting make our streets unsafe for pedestrians. Our proposal is simple. We aim to solve a significant part of these issues here itself.
Now on the right side, we can solve this with a few strategies. First, we increase the ground's recharge capacity, which mitigates seasonal flooding. Second, we create a clean, healthy environment by implementing innovative ways of managing waste. And finally, we make our streets and public spaces more accessible, vibrant, and safe. We solve our problems ourselves instead of passing them on to the next community or generation. This plan gives you an overview of the target area, from 3rd Cross Junction on the left to 4th Cross Junction on the right. At 3rd Cross Junction, currently, busy traffic mixes with street vendors and pedestrians in a flood-prone zone. We've turned this into a street food plaza where existing vendors and their customers are safely separated from road traffic as they enjoy the well-shaded food court. A nearby auto stand and bicycle share stand makes this hub easy to access. 3rd A Cross Junction features a focal gathering space equipped with convenient public toilets and drinking water fountains. At 4th Cross Junction is a new branch of Bengaluru's Dry Waste Collection Center initiative, an education hub where caretakers and action groups collaborate towards community-led solutions for waste management.
If you notice, the canal itself is mostly unchanged. The proposal bridges across the canal at key junctions where outdoor community spaces have been placed. This ensures that the community spaces get maximum visibility while not being placed directly in front of any adjacent houses, respecting the privacy of the residents. Doing so also ensures minimal impact on the historic canal. The interventions are easy to implement as they work within the existing framework of roads and services. Let's see these interventions in detail in the following slides.
So what does a day at the new Rajakalave Park look like? The 3 junctions are connected by vibrant walkways and bridges along the canal, shaded by the existing trees. The ground is finished with hollow pavers, bioswales, and rain gardens planted with native species, which all allow water to be absorbed. This helps recharge groundwater and mitigates the risk of flooding. The pathways weave through a series of play, seating, and gathering spaces for all ages. Bright and colorful signage ensures safe movement, and identification boards for native plants and animal species make the experience of the park interactive, while also bringing awareness to our non-human neighbors.
Hazardous elements, such as transformers along the streets, have been raised out of reach of children, and the park is uniformly lit with a combination of lower-level bollard lighting and an engineered suspended lighting system. This system holds the trees in place and prevents them from leaning towards the building. By positioning all the lights below the canopy line, the lighting remains unobstructed. This lighting creates a charming atmosphere and adds to the beauty of the Rajakalve while providing good visual security. Finally, the entire park features murals by talented local artists. Let's look at the 3rd A Cross Junction. Bridging across the Rajakalve here makes the HRBR park directly accessible for residents on the other side of the canal. The neighborhood walkability improves, as does the health and participation of its residents. The Gathering Circle is an outdoor amphitheater, perfect for inclusive community events like a children's book reading, a senior social circle, or a health and wellness exercise for BBMP street sweepers. The entire zone is pedestrian only, well lit, and colorfully decorated by murals. The area is also equipped with a net zero toilet with drinking water fountains.
A space like this aims to serve all user groups. It's convenient for the coconut seller, it provides options for the auto driver, and it's safe for local runners, walkers, and cyclists. Public spaces that are beautiful, functional, and inclusive are proven to instill a sense of ownership and responsibility towards the space. In an exciting step towards decentralizing waste management, the 4th Cross Junction is home to the new Dry Waste Collection Center, a convenient spot for residents and other users to drop off their waste, solving the dumping issue. A good community should facilitate economic and social growth for its members. This is also known as upwards mobility. BBMP waste workers with organizations like Sahas they segregate and upcycle waste into useful items like mats, pots, bags, plates, and more. The products can be sold or used at vendor stalls to make supplemental income for the workers. At communal composting zones, wet waste creates fertilizer for sale and for the upkeep of community gardens and plantings along the canal. The composting is run and maintained by an existing neighborhood nursery, that has now been given a dedicated space to sell their plants at the Rajakalavay Park. With guidance from experts like the Daily Dump, the newly appointed gardener educates street vendors and residents on proper wet waste management.
The nursery head, volunteers, local families, and waste workers all engage in this circular relationship. This community manages its own waste simply by having a space to do so. Let's try to do this at a larger scale. What you're seeing here is a plan of Banaswadi with the Rajakalve running straight down its center. Our proposal on a broad level focuses on connecting the existing large open spaces like the Chelekere, the HRPR Park, and the upcoming BDA Housing Society or the Banaswadi Tank. The Bengaluru's lakes are responsible for holding and recharging massive amounts of stormwater, but their slow disappearance is making the city even more prone to flooding. These existing large open spaces and future developments hold the key to mitigating the city's flooding. They can be designed as seasonal water bodies that fulfill the purpose of these disappearing lakes. This re-envisioning can set an example for other communities to follow. As we connect these spaces, we keep attaching smaller communal spaces such as the street food plaza, the amphitheater, the waste management center, sports areas, and so on. These add vibrancy and liveliness to the streets. It's that simple. We rejuvenate our greens, attach communal spaces, and connect them with vibrant streets. Easy. We'd like to end this presentation with 2 more points. First, we have prepared a rough strategy on implementation and phasing, as well as stakeholders and funding. If anyone is interested, please let us know during the Q&A round. Secondly, we'd like to share an observation a community representative made during the workshop. He said, at the end of the day, you're planners and designers and can only do the foundational work for us. After that, it is our responsibility to respect the space and use it correctly. An important part of that is a change in the attitude of the people here.
We could not agree more. That is why our interventions focus on giving a platform to all user groups to interact and work together. Our hope is that all of this collective action, along with this historic water body, instills a shared identity in the Banaswadi Rajakalavay people.
A community that shares the same spaces, takes care of its own waste, takes pride in its diversity, its public spaces, its caretakers, its artists, its flora and fauna, and its effort to heal Bengaluru.
A community that is inclusive, accessible, accommodating, charming, and safe. Let's make a great community. We had a great time sharing our work with you, and we hope you enjoyed listening to us. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think we can open it out for judges' comments and questions. We'll have around 10 minutes for comments and questions from judges.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Actually, you have covered most of the issues. I think very, very comprehensive proposal, I should say. But I have one doubt in the sense, I have one doubt where you have proposed the children play area, vendors, senior citizens, water body, and segregation units, waste processing, and also this horticulture and all other things. Don't you think this is very, very ambitious proposal for the given that small stretch? Do you think is it practical to implement this?
Absolutely, this is a very good question, and the idea of any proposal such as this is firstly to do it in phases. So we do a quick sort of low cost exercise and understand what interventions are taking, with mostly using temporary construction. And if they seem to be working well, it's only then do we move on towards permanence and actually investing large sums of money and seeing if it's worth it. So it would help us understand. But of course, we have a lot of goals in the proposal that we are trying to address, and We feel that these are legitimate problems of the community, and this is such a beautiful place to solve it because it's such a historic water body.
Okay, then why don't you come up with a stage-wise implementation scheme so that we can take it up in a phased manner? And
absolutely. So if you see on the left side are the quick, low-cost sort of solutions. We can do this within a month's time almost and have almost 60% of the functionality. We can remove the fencing. We can then we can invite in organizations such as Srishti, that is or other fine art institutions to come and paint and make the entire street vibrant. We can also add the temporary lighting to make the streets safe. And instead of actually doing the paving and all of those things now, we can simply place traffic cones to demarcate zones so that it's easy for people to feel safe. We can obviously clear the lower level growth because all of that is kind of obstructing the sightlines from one side to the other side. So that would make it a lot more, that would give visibility and safety. And finally, one thing also that we can do is that there is a neighborhood nursery that is at the end of the canal that is occupying one of the footpaths. And our idea is to give that nursery dedicated space along this canal. And once we do that, we hope to expect that in return, the nursery maintains the entire stretch and starts the composting programs.
nursery would be a nice idea, but how about dry waste collection center? Because nobody wants the waste to be handled next to their yard. So how do you address that? Because most of the, you expect a lot of children and senior citizens to come to this place. They may not appreciate this idea.
I understand. Do you want to take it or should I?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
All right. So actually, sir, we are kind of trying to change the community's attitude towards waste and waste management. Placing the DWCC in an inaccessible place would simply lead to it being neglected and underused, which is what is happening to some of the DWCCs in Bengaluru. Waste can be managed in a controlled, safe, and even aesthetically pleasing manner. Visiting a waste management center like the ones that Sahas runs are surprisingly inspiring. Firstly, it's very inspiring, and which is what we are looking to do. And lastly, I would like to share this with everyone that let's not forget that some people may consider something unappealing, but it's actually someone else's day-to-day reality. We feel that this center is something that doesn't need to be hidden. In fact, it kind of deserves center stage going forward for the vision that we have for Bengaluru.
And just if I could add, it also wouldn't be something that this community is kind of inventing or doing for the first time. Like there are great examples of communities who are involved in taking care of their waste in a way that's like sanitary, attractive, and it is so because people are engaged and responsible and active. And the intention with our proposal is like, yes, we're showing you kind of like a resulting vision once all the steps have taken. But in a way, those steps have already started, like the visioning workshops that have already been done with the community, just starting to get people to think critically about their community. So we see this proposal as possible after a series of steps like that are participatory, that are small, and that are low budget. And of course, this presentation is kind of the summary of what all of these actions and steps can amount to.
Okay.
Great. So let me just ask Mohan, is it okay if I go? Yeah. So nice coverage of many of these issues. One really liked the detailing you've done, the inclusivity that you're providing with the space for livelihoods and the thinking that you've put into each one of these intersections and the kind of spacing that you're talked about. That's very nice. A couple of clarificatory kind of questions for you. The residents have identified dog poo as one of the major challenges, and they've identified sewage effluents and smell as major challenges. I didn't see those 2 points being mentioned as to how you're dealing with dog poo and with sewage effluent. If you could just clarify.
Absolutely. So if you were to zoom into this image, you would see that there are some receptacles placed along this path. So this one, there's a little sort of dog symbol. All of this to say, we think having like a complete wayfinding package that can be part of the experience of the canal, easily identifiable, regardless of what language you speak or whether you can read or not, having sort of pictographic signs for, where to drop your dog waste or where to just drop, everyday litter, would definitely be a part of this scheme for sure. I think just hearing you ask that question, we wanted to take a kind of soft and naturalized approach to this urban design, as opposed to like a very hardscaped, rigid urban landscape design. The purpose being Bangalore is so naturalized, it's so beautiful and lush, and there's kind of a freedom in that growth. So here there is that sort of meandering pathway, but certainly there would be easy to identify and locate places to, drop your dog waste and other litter as well.
And the sewage one, sewage in the channel.
So sewage. It's actually interesting that you bring the sewage point. I'd like to address this. The sewage is being disposed into like when we are talking about black water coming into the canal. Now this is out of a need. This is because other people don't have an option. This is the first idea. Let's say the informal settlements were identified that were dumping the sewage into the canal from almost a kilometer away. Now, if we can set an example, firstly, of how can you manage, how can an informal settlement itself set up a toilet and manage its waste, it will serve as sort of, it'll probably inspire them to do that themselves instead of forcibly dumping into the canal. The other idea is obviously with the garbage itself being dumped by residents and other user groups coming and throwing garbage in. Hopefully, the new dry waste collection center acts like that convenient place to just drop it off. And then we have our composting zones with technical partners in Bangalore, which are now everywhere, like Daily Dump, which they can, and along with the neighborhood nursery that we have proposed, they can help manage the wet waste. Obviously, the current infrastructure of BBMP, waste pickups, and all of those are still in place, but we're also trying to make it easier for them so that they don't have to go like house by house and pick up all of this, and they can do it at one spot.
Yeah. So the last point that I wanted to ask from you is that the drain itself, you've not touched it, right, as a design element?
No, the drain. No, the canal itself, no. The Rajakalve itself, we haven't touched. Of course, we propose that right now there is bottlenecking at the end, under the outer ring road. We have proposed in our master plan that it obviously gets widened so that bottlenecking is not there. But otherwise, we have left it as we have touched it as little as possible. And cool.
Yeah, I think just to add a quick anecdote, we both have benefited from living in or close to this area. So walking along this canal was in some way, part of the daily experience. And the stonework of the canal, the way that it's constructed is something that is quite beautiful as an artifact of, the rural past of the city. So we felt the beautification should happen kind of around this canal and in the attitudes and activities of people, and leave this beautiful stone canal as a part of the city, a historic part of the city.
Thank you, team 763. The time for questions is up. If you could stop sharing your screen. That was
Sorry, I just had a point before we sort of move on. Just a minute. I just wanted to ensure that it felt to me as if the scale of the intervention in section was way bigger than it actually is. And I was wondering if you could sort of just like narrate what the actual size is and how much of space is actually going into the garden, into the pedestrian cycling way next to the canal. Absolutely. And like whether you're co-opting part of the road. That would
Absolutely.
be really great. And thank you so much for the wonderful presentation.
You're welcome. Absolutely. The entire road width is 33.2 meters, about 100 feet. That's what we've been working with. The footpaths that you see at the end, the ones directly at the buildings, those are about 6 feet. Followed by two drivable lanes which are existing right now. They're at 7 meters. We've reduced them to about 5.8 meters, or some 5.8 meters, 2.9, yes, 5.8 meters, followed by the remainder space, which is 2.5 plus 5.5, 8 meters. The entire thing that is remaining along with the Rajakalve from the middle is 8 meters, out of which 2 is taken up by the Rajakalve itself, and we have 6.5 meters for 6 meters for the bioswales and rain gardens and the footpath. We have divided that in a more flexible way, but obviously if you see on one side, the footpath is wider because we aimed at it being as like the more thoroughfare kind of zone. So over there, the footpath is 3 meters, followed by about 2.5 to 3 meters of bioswales. But on the other side, the bioswale part gets a lot wider. Over here, you're not seeing it because of the parking in this particular view, but it's almost 5 meters over there, followed by just a 2 meter footpath. So that accounts for the entire 33.2 meters.
So it's, sorry, just to clarify this, so it's 7 meters on either side?
Including the parking space, including the parking, which is staggered. If you're seeing that it's staggered, the overall parking that we have given is actually something that the community requested because they didn't have space to park their cars within their plots right now, which is 1 car parking per plot, and we've added another 10% for visitors, just because we feel that it might be useful.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Mohan sir, do you have a question as well?
Yeah, it's more a general comment. I mean, this is just continuing from what Vishwanath said about while I take the author's perspective of how you want to retain the canal as an artifact, and the larger streetscape as an idea seems to work very well. I would still think that foregrounding the identity of the canal would still be important. Right now, it's almost become incidental as an element of the urban landscape. I'm sure there is a lot of detailing, like the 5 minutes that you spent explaining the cross section because you guys have worked on it. You would want to get into a lot of details, but at this stage, you should realize it's the larger concepts and ideas that really matter. I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of detailing that's gone through for signage and the height of the curb and the paving and things, all of which are important. But as an ideas thing, I would still urge at least the next 4 to concentrate on the larger picture and please not get into construction details because it doesn't allow for a very constructive dialogue. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mohan sir. With that, I think team 809 is ready. So if the previous team can stop sharing the screen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Team 809, are you here? You're on mute.
We're here, yes.
Yeah, if you could share your screen, thank you.
Just give us a second.
Hello everyone, we would like to present our proposal for the Urban Revamp Design Challenge, the Weaving Walk. The Rajakalve Canal sits at the heart of the HRBRNAyat, and its waterways and lakes are an important part of Bengaluru's identity. A zoomed-in version shows the site surrounding with its main green spaces and nearby amenities like schools and retail. We can also see how the site is embedded in a network of streets for vehicles and pedestrians. which is not ideally connecting our sites to adjacent neighborhoods. To achieve greater insight into the neighborhood, a participatory process was followed. It provided insights into the diverse needs of various stakeholder groups and the special considerations necessary for vulnerable groups and people with special needs. This first step brings communities, governments, designers, developers, and individuals together to find integrated solutions for the Rajakalit Canal. Our design solutions are based on the problems which the locals are experiencing on a daily basis. After analyzing the output of the participatory workshop, we could identify several issues that affect the residents and the visitors of the site. These issues involved regular flooding, improper garbage disposal, dog pool, unorganized parking, speeding of vehicles for street lighting, theft and crime, urination spots, and bad smell from sewage. These issues make the space unfit for outdoor interaction and create a sense of fragmentation within the community.
It is therefore important for us to come up with the following question to inform our design process at all stages. How can we develop a resilient, integrated, and safe open space for the people of the community? To emphasize the relationship between the canal and its surroundings, we suggest a design concept that connects three main aspects to weave the canal back into society. One, Bengaluru's ecology. Two, its mobility. Three, its sense of community. Through the experience of the weaving work, we are convinced to link the natural environment with urban spaces, connect the site to its adjacent body, and empower the neighborhood's culture. Those three pillars form the base of our concept.
But I don't think we can hear this very
identified during the participatory process. In order to conceptualize the outcome of the future.
Sorry, but we can't. The sound is very bad. Like it's not clear at all.
Yeah, if you could pause this and perhaps explain these sections. It was very hard to understand what was being said. You're on mute, sorry.
If this is pre-recorded, what you need to do is actually, when you share this, you need to choose computer audio sound for it to play properly.
Sorry?
So if you're using the pre-recorded sound, what you need to do is actually just stop sharing it, again share it. And then once you are sharing it, you will see like this option to actually see use computer audio sound and for video. You'll need to check those boxes. And then just try and let us tell you if it is still okay. Otherwise, you'll have to speak through this.
Okay, so click the option to.
Yeah, once you start sharing, you'll see the two check boxes.
Yeah.
Computer audio sound, optimize for video, something like that.
Yeah.
Just check both the voices, both the boxes, and then share.
Okay. Illustrate the main aspects with. Is it better?
Play for a little bit more.
Within each pillar. This provides us with the information required to identify multiple scenarios and prepare the design toolkit.
That's okay, right, Ankit?
Yeah, I think it's, and just move it a little bit.
Better, but can we move back
from your concept? Yeah, your concept you could start.
From here?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Convinced to link the natural environment with urban spaces, connect the site to its adjacent quarters, and empower the neighborhood's culture. Those three pillars form the base of our concept and present solutions to each problems identified during the participatory process. In order to conceptualize the Rajakalit of the future, we envision a symbiotic relationship between the neighborhood and the canal. We identify strategies and concepts on a master plan and demonstrate the main aspects within each pillar.
This provides us with the information required to identify multiple scenarios and prepare the design toolkit.
Through the creation of this design toolkit, we target different aspects of each pillar. The toolkit approach is an effective way to integrate multiple systems within site-specific interventions. The canal is reprogrammed for active recreation, and our urban design principles form a guideline that Bengaluru can adopt to direct its long-term strategy of placemaking. On an ecological level, we consider tree mapping and observation of the water levels as a first step. We then tackle bad smells with flower beds and more diverse planters, and elaborate linkages between existing greenery as a second step. We introduce waste management cycle for the removal of the waste and suggest a rainwater collection for a circular water system as a third step. To improve mobility, we introduce in the first stage accessibility and the steps that needs to be taken to guarantee it. As a second step, we think of an inclusive space, which means wide pedestrian zones, cycle lanes, shared roads, not only on the site, but also to the adjacent neighborhood to ensure a smooth flow of movement. We are welcoming joggers, walkers, dog walkers, as we include dog bins, but also children, people with wheelchairs, cyclists, with lanes wide enough to be shared. Additionally, a street light system powered by solar energy can be implemented, and also a CCTV system has been suggested. For the third pillar, community, we suggest ways to mobilize communities to address the current problems around the canal. The intention is to build trust across various stakeholders and to achieve a wider sense of community. The first main action to activate the community is to inform them about the new gathering options for temporary and permanent spaces, and create a first community group that will take action in security issues. Through activating spaces, people can generate value out of the vending zones on the site and through garage sales in the neighborhoods. As a last step, we encourage people to initiate urban shared gardens and collaborate for art fairs or community events. Here, combined overview of the actions, and within each pillar, we have 3 stages of implementation. And within each implementation, we suggest 2 actions that can be taken by residents, visitors, government, or any other party involved to improve the urban surroundings of Bengaluru. In the first stage, we come up with simple steps that won't change the infrastructure much, but are actions that are essential and can be quickly implemented.
We then illustrate different uses of spaces according to our design principles directly on our site and relate each of them back to our design toolkit. With ecology, we want to demonstrate how the residents or visitors can protect, enhance, or get involved in constructing a sustainable environment. For mobility, we show how the interactions can be used and how the network runs through the site. And for communal interactions, we list down the actions linked to our site and what can be done to actively generate and collaborate throughout the neighborhood. This site plan can later also be used to inform residents about the locations of different spaces. We can see from the site plan our paths and lanes are interwoven with each other, and a pattern of interconnectedness is starting to emerge. To tie our woven path back to our design concept, we need you to empathize with the experience of the walkthrough of our site. We've created a section along the canal and analyzed different experiences of noise and activity by mimicking our reading walk. It enables the user to form their own mental map through the various functions embedded across the whole stretch of the site. By illustrating our ideas in the full stretch with some highlighted detail segments, we are presenting our intentions and how the spaces could be used once implemented. Our design offers a lot of spatial variations for the many uses involved, including all age groups. We focused on entrance plaza, visualizing the welcoming edge, and kids' playground to demonstrate the integration of all ages with benches and spaces for families and elderly people. The junction shows the slow traffic conditions, demarcated spaces with reflective pavement markers and bollards. The fourth illustration visualizes
Team,
the
you only
garden
have 1
patches
minute left.
depicted across the whole site, which offers an intimate green space as a complement to the park for the comfort of the user.
With the following renders, we want to visualize the look and feel of the spaces around the canal. Here is a visual according to the Ecology, demonstrating the hammock, its interaction with the canal, the surrounding trees, and also the integration of public toilets, which are related to the water cycle. This one is about mobility-related subjects, illustrating the connection between the neighborhood, the integration of cycle lanes and pedestrian zones. The render also showcases the single-sided vehicular parking along the residential buildings, leaving the space on the other side more porous. Moving on the site, we also want to show some communal aspects, like the spaces for invited vendors during community events, the children's playground, and the sitting area in the background. An important factor about the design suggestion is to implement a circular system for waste and water management that combines the sewage drains, the filtration beds, collection of rainwater, the filtering for reuse of the water for public toilets and irrigation. Our implementation framework highlights the actions which can be taken at different stages of the realization of the project, and how the involved stakeholder can build upon the communal or municipal resources to scale it up for the whole stretch of the master plan in multiple phases, creating an urban space woven in harmony with its ecology, mobility, and community. Our framework can be successfully implemented to reinforce each other and create multiple co-benefits. The proposal illustrates possible pathways towards revamping Rajakalus across Bangalore as part of the public commons in multiple phases as modules, while creating strategies to conserve them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, team. I'll request the judges if they have any questions.
Yeah, if I can go first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't have questions so much as a general comment. I must say, as an idea of conceptualizing Rajkalways as public commons, I think it's a great effort. I mean, there is a certain fluidity in the design, a certain inbuilt inherent dynamism that allows for multiple ways for the spaces to be used, and catering and including very different user groups. I think that's a great start. There is one opportunity which I think could be explored, and which I think is important as part of this idea of the public commons, how visually, physically, and experientially the idea of the Kalwe itself and the idea of water, whether it is seasonal or flowing perennially, becomes part of the public experience. I think that is something that has potential to be explored a little further. Right now, it has become completely subsumed by the more urban aesthetic that has actually taken over the space. But otherwise, I think it's been a very methodical way of looking and examining the three pillars, and also trying to layer the three pillars and see their impact on each other. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Let me just sort of push the boundary. How do you see this space as is it a neighborhood resource? Is it a ward resource? Or is it a city resource?
Oh, sorry, could you repeat it?
Yeah, I didn't quite fully get it.
Now, how do you see this design space? Is it a neighborhood resource? Is it a ward resource? Or is it a city resource? In your thinking when you're designing?
I think it can be taken apart in different aspects. So as we have the full stretch of the site master plan, this will be integrated in the HRBR layout on a wider scale, basically. But then if we look at the stretch from the isometric view, we kind of only focused on the site area. And we really wanted to make sure that it kind of works on a neighborhood level, because I think it's really important to tie it back to the residents on a very small scale. And that's why we kind of had the focus on two different scales, because on a large scale we couldn't kind of make the whole concept let's say work. But if we zoom in, we can quickly see the different amenities, like community aspects, which needs to be kind of focused on a small scale, basically. So I think neighborhood for this kind of concept development, the neighborhood level is really important to see it from a human scale, how the mobility functions, how actually the cycles go through the canal, crossing the bridging, and also involving the people's movement, basically.
And the next sort of just to push on it is the use of the terminology, right? Like if you say canal and you say Rajkalwe, or you call it a storm drain, or you call it a sewage channel, each has a different interpretation and a different way of interacting with that described word, right? So my sense of it is you're treating it as a canal. Do I get that right? So the Rajkalwe, in the sense, has a historicity about it. It's got a construct which is linking tanks and particular irrigation metaphors associated with it. A stormwater drain has a hydrological function, but you're treating it in a combination because you want your sewage lines to go into that. Did I see that in one of your sections? The sewage flows going into that. So. Yeah. Conceptually, what's happening within that water body? Is sewage still continuing to flow, or will you have treated sewage, or how are you going to deal with it?
No, it's actually, we would continue it to be a stormwater drain, but the sewage thing that we had shown in the section was after it's being processed through the filtration unit, because there is.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, so there has been issues.
Let me just give it.
So we want water to the kind of flow of water to continue.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I had a few questions. I think when I was looking at this proposal, the first thing that struck me was that it was quite overbuilt. Like, I think from the site, if you experience the site, the first thing that catches your attention is that this particular neighborhood in the Rajkalwe that exists here is fairly like special. I think bridges do something very special here, and I think the way it connects the streets, all of that is quite special. But also the Rajkalwe as an element is a special kind of openness that otherwise doesn't really exist in every sort of street or every adjacent street. I think for me, what this is doing is this is calling the Rajkalwe as the second or third child. And it's kind of really like concrete, like building up the whole landscape, which otherwise, I think there's a new imagination to be discovered around the ecology of water and the neighborhood that I feel this misses. And there is a new imagination that I think is not there yet. Right now, a lot of the, I think, dialogue around Rajkalwe is about sewage. It is about garbage being lobbed over the fences. That is the current sort of thing. But there's a lot that's also going on right now. Like there are these gardens that are happening along the Rajkalwe that has been co-opted as neighborhood garden. There's a lot of stuff happening. And I feel like we're still not like trying to reimagine what this water ecology as a whole could be while retaining this special kind of openness that is there in an otherwise fairly built up city that we have. And I'm not sure that and also this kind of building up is extremely expensive. So I don't see it as a scalable solution to that. The other thing that struck me also as I was listening to you guys is that one side is this new water ecology side of it. And I think Vishwanath sir was also talking about like this way, different kinds of water that actually there, like when it rains, when it sort of overfills, when there's less water, there's all kinds of life that is happening. There's like the water is not a static element. The other thing is there is perhaps some need to thinking of the co-management of this area. I feel like I was missing that in the previous proposal as well. That design puts so much onus on this create in its own life rather than kind of how can design solve some of these issues of co-management, I think, with the community. So yeah, I just maybe some of your thoughts on just how you experience a site and what you thought when you were kind of building all these myriad of bridges, and just your thoughts on the built versus unbuilt, I think would be really interesting.
Thank you for your comment. I can quickly react to your comment. It is indeed true that we kind of focused very heavily on the concept development, and obviously for the concept we need a design, and our design was kind of an answer to all the concepts, but the emphasis is really on the toolkits that we want to push for. And I think as a base we take the existing condition as well as the urban gardens and the existing trees location and so on. But as we put the concept in 3 different stages, the infrastructure can be added at a later stage. But I think first it's really important to combine those 3 pillars: ecology, mobility, and community. And there we kind of thought exactly, because we were expecting a similar comment. So we kind of also focus on initial steps that can be taken that kind of are low cost, and then drive the design in that way. And the infrastructure can be added later on.
And also about the use of bridges, and we didn't see it as something overpowering the canal. The bridging actually adds a certain way of interacting with the canal. We tried to come up with more similar option with the hammock, where they are a bit more in sync, as in very close to the water body. So we did have ideas to come up with how people could interact with the canal, and the bridges, in my opinion, actually is a way of interacting with the canal rather than it kind of overpowering it. And like Noora said, the construction of it was supposed to come in the later stages, be more focused on the toolkit and both sides of the canal as well, and finding these pillars as a way to connect them.
Thank you. Unless any other judges have questions, we would like to go in for a 10-minute break. Do other judges have questions? Great. Then if you could kindly stop sharing your screen, and we will pause the recording, go in for a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 10:52. So I request all the participants to be back by 10:52 as well as the judges.
Thank you.
Venkat, your screen is being shared. I don't know if you intended that to be the case.
Is everyone back? Venkat, I'm going to request you to stop sharing your screen.
Yeah, we're back.
Participants, I hope you're back. Are all the judges here? Team 813, are you here?
Yes.
Great. Are you ready to present?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Please share your screen.
Let's start.
And I'm having an issue with my video. Is it fine if I don't on my camera?
Sorry, I missed that. What did you say?
No, I'm having an issue with streaming my video. So is it fine if I just off my camera?
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So our proposal, the urban pinpricks, aims for a social, ecological, and safe 8th main. So the site in its present condition, the canal, the buffer, and the 8th main as a whole is in a state of disuse in the existing condition. So what we propose is a framework of interventions which aim for an social, ecological, and safe 8th main. So our we catalog the interventions under these 3 headings. So socially vibrant, inclusive, and recreational spine, ecological and resilient spine, safe, clean, and organized spine. So each of these proposals are listed through the time taken for setting them up, the cost for setting them up, and the maintenance required for the proposal to function as a whole. So under the first heading, we have a certain set of proposals which aim for a socially inclusive and recreational spine. So these align with the SDGs 3 and 11. So we present each of these sets of proposals in view of how they align with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. So what we thought was making a good place is created through habituation of the place. So our first proposal is events like worldwide car-free events which are being carried out in many places. So during these events, which can happen possibly once a week regularly, so a part of the street can be just blocked off, and we can have residents of the surrounding to actually take over the street and use it for their recreational purposes. So another set of events could be screening events. Bangaloreans are huge RCB fanatics. So IPL screenings could take place, and other football Premier Leagues could take place. So habituation is used as a tool for placemaking, and that's our first primary idea. So placemaking through social production. So we preserve the buffer as such in our proposal. So we just envision them as community gardens, which can be used as a tool for social production. So that's one main proposal. So what we observed during our initial site study was the surroundings to be slightly socially loose. So we use community gardens as a tool for improving the social cohesion of the neighborhood. So apart from that, people can also be engaged with food production, and there's the gap between urban areas and food production can be reduced. So one of our analysis parts was we came up with a safety map of the site. So which was through on-site observations and the community engagement, thanks to the organizers. So through these studies, we came up with a certain conclusion that these red spots, which are unsafe according to our map, so these turned out to be spots where the cross street and the 8th main meet, as well as the pedestrian bridges which cuts across the Raja Kalve. So we intervened in these spots. We did surgical interventions in these spots. So first we envisioned pocket parks along these junctions of the cross streets and the 8th Main. So these could be easily implementable, as well as economical interventions which can which is a first step towards placemaking in the surroundings. So this negates the negative character of the surrounding to a certain extent. A more long-term and a more cost-intensive proposal was platforms for play. So these are platforms which aim for inclusive recreation. So it kind of has everyone in mind. So it is for each of the residents, each of the stakeholders. So what we did was to negate the negative character of the existing pedestrian bridges, we just expanded the area of the pedestrian bridges, so to make it a place for the people, and we pushed them down to the ground level, so it's easily accessible by a neighborhood. So this is a view of one of the play platforms. So these are location of the platforms in the site. So they bridge across the Rajakaal Way on either side of the street. So another proposal was an framework for an elastic 8th Main. So this reflects the temporal character of the pedestrians which was observed. So there is not a constant flow of pedestrian. There are peaks of pedestrian activity during different times of the day. So the proposed road section reclaims a part of the existing carriageway. So that during the peak pedestrian hours, residents can take over the street, so they can use that part of the road. Whereas during normal usage, vehicular movement dominates. These are proposals for an ecological and resilient spine. So these align with the SDGs 6 and 15. So our first proposal is retrofitting the canal. So one major complaint from the residents was the canal being a constant discharge of sewage. So we used a set of nature-based solutions which remediated these issues. So this is a particular part in the detailed site where we are using a kind of stepped wetland to actually filter the incoming grey water. So these are certain vegetation options for the wetlands. So next was retrofitting the stormwater drains. So these aimed at two things. One is retrofitting the stormwater drains in the cross streets which were ill-maintained, and also retrofitting along the 8th Main. So these provide proper access ways for stormwater drain to actually reach the Rajakaal Way. So one issue which always happens is non-point source pollution with stormwater. So retrofitting them with bioswales helps in remediating this. So using native species of plants helps in long-lasting and low-maintenance bioswales. So Bangalore is Bangalore and its the Bangalore city area is one victim of rapid urbanization. So to tackle that, to promote biodiversity in urban areas, so one of the proposals was a pollinator-friendly zone along the buffer area adjoining the Rajakaal Way, and preserving and integrating the existing vegetation along with the huger frame of proposal is another aim. The locations of proposals. So the last set of proposals is towards a safe, clean, and organized spine, and these align with a certain set of SDGs 3, 11, and 6. So one major stakeholders to be considered in retrofitting the Banaswadi site was the street vendors. So street vendors basically work on the basis of visual and access immediacy. So zoning them in the junction next to the grocery store was one proposal. So retrofitting the junction to help them to provide them with proper vending spaces, and also accommodating the auto rickshaw stand was one major proposal. So vending doesn't happen throughout the day; it's a temporal activity. So giving provisions for accommodating other events post vending hours was also a major proposal. So another issue was high speed of traffic in the 8th main. So we used certain traffic calming elements. We used speed tables at the cross street and 8th main junctions, and bulb outs along the 8th main road, which helps in reducing the to a certain extent helps in reducing the high speed of traffic. So all of the cross streets and 8th main junctions were retrofitted with proper segregated waste collection provisions. So apart from having the usual set of waste bins, there are also specific bins which accommodated pet waste. So that's one thing. So on-street parking, haphazard on-street parking was a major issue in the site. So one observation while walking through the site was sparsely located unused private land. So we thought this could be used as a resource where for the community, where people could instead of parking on street, they could actually take up this empty lots either for parking spots, and depending upon the owner's preferences, they could also be used as spots for community gardens as well as pollinator friendly spots.
Your time is nearly up. I would request.
Yeah, that's it. So in the last set, we just give out guidelines to actually facing all the proposals. So these are certain sets which, yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much. I would open it up to the judges.
Hello, I think he has covered most of the aspects as far as the site requirements are concerned. The proposal is really good, and he's looking at the local need than the idealistic situation. Most of the other participants, what they explained was their ideal situation. Now I think this is need-based, and I think this is one of the good proposals we have received.
Thank you.
Mohan?
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, Vishnu.
Yeah, okay. I just sort of don't want to intrude too much into the landscape space and figure it out. So it's quite nice that you started to analyze the issues in a systematic fashion and propose solutions for individual challenges across the thing, right? At particular locales and all that, which is very nice to see. Now, how I'm just trying to conceptually get this clear in my head. There's an existing practice of solid waste management there, right? There must be door-to-door collection. There must be dry waste being collected sometime during the week and wet waste during some time of the week.
Yeah.
How are you trying to integrate or improve the efficiency of that collection of the solid waste as a solution to your problem, which you see in terms of garbage dumping?
So
are you thinking of that?
Yeah, we have thought of that. So when we mentioned about this all waste management, so we provided waste management bins at a certain spot along the 8th main. So what we observed during our site study was that people just walked in from the cross streets, from their residences. They came out and they dumped it in the zones, in the nodes where the cross streets meet the 8th main. So this dumping pattern, we observed this pattern of dumping. So what we thought was as you said, there is an existing system of waste collection. So even with the presence of such a system, this thing happens on a regular basis. So we thought, okay, why not actually support this thing, but in an organized fashion, as in have the waste collection points at the place where they are used to dumping. So
yeah, no, so that's the solution. But the BBMP's overall solution of solid waste management is not to collect it from bins on the street, right? It's door-to-door collection. That's a policy, right? So now you'll have to fit in the scheme to make sure that those bins that you provided are also frequently emptied, right? So you'll have to think on those lines. The second one is with the sewage generation. Simultaneously, you've taken it as a given that sewage will come into the storm drain, and you think that constructed wetlands will be a solution. In terms of the volume of the sewage that's being generated and the space needed for constructed wetlands, have you done some sort of thinking? How much space would you need to treat the sewage flows?
No, we haven't actually given a quantum to that. So we just gave it as a proposal. So we'll actually try to
it's just a basic idea, right? Okay. Okay. All right, fine. So that's from my part. Mohan, it's yours.
I think it's interesting when you actually relate ideas of SDGs into individual approaches and components. I think as a process going forward for larger public spaces, not just Raj Kalwe or other things, but as an approach to space making or any kind of interventions in the commons, I think that's a fairly strong point. I think while a lot of attention has been paid to problem solving and a lot of them have been solved. For example, you've actually re-looked at the cross-section of the Kalwe and things like that. If that envelope could be pushed a little bit beyond the problem solving, because sometimes the temptation is to solve the immediate, and definitely the public agencies and even the citizens will actually be very happy that we are solving those things. But as a process to take it forward, something that is scalable, not just at the ward level, but maybe extending to the city fabric, it could break a few boundaries beyond the problem solving by provoking larger ideas.
Yeah, okay, sir.
It's really not a question, it's just a thought.
I got it, yeah.
I just wanted to say it's a very nice presentation, and then even I was very happy to sort of see these proposals tied up with the SDG. So there's at least some larger thinking going around this. I think compared to the previous proposals we've seen, this one, it seems to me like you were trying to go a little bit lighter on the fabric and like kind of do minimal stuff that needed to happen here, and not go like 100% into it. So from what I understand, it's a lot of like extend this, plug this into it, and like a couple of these plugs are happening, and that's pretty much what the main interventions are, if I'm not wrong. And so, I mean, one thing that was very refreshing to see is that there is a disability access part of it as well. I'm not sure if the technical side of it from a slopes perspective will actually work, because the stairs won't be the same as the ramp, but that's a very small thing. I think in general, considering the side of the people who can't access these spaces and giving them room is a good idea. Also, just because in the public realm, you have to kind of think of the maximum and the minimum in terms of the interventions. It is interesting to have a proposal that is relatively lighter and faster perhaps to build. And then we can all kind of come together and kind of reassess what is the second layer of intervention and third layer of intervention that can be done. Like, I don't see much in this that is fundamentally changing the landscape so much that it's impossible to do. I kind of see it as a kind of low-hanging proposal in a way that can be done. I also like the fact that I think you acknowledge the fact that there's a side drain going into the Rajkaluwe. And as Vishwanath sir was saying, that maybe the wetland calculation may not be right, but at least there's an acknowledgement that there's another actually source that is coming into it, and maybe there's a way we can treat it to the wetland. I think to me, at some point, the wetland, while being a functional element, it is also a public acknowledgement of, hey, we need to kind of deal with this solution that is perhaps going to be, like this problem is perhaps going to be here for a little while. And it is a bit uncertain. We don't know whether the sewage inflow will stop right now or it won't. But it is kind of interesting to look at design as not just solving the problem, but actually some of these elements become great ways for the community to acknowledge that, hey, I have a wetland here because there is something happening, like the sewage inflow that's happening here. So the elements are responding to the problem, but they also add to the quality of the space. I think that was, for me, quite interesting to see if that thing can be pulled across also other elements. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Does any other juror have any questions? If not, we will move on to team 877. Thank you, 813. If you could stop sharing your screen. Team 877, please take.
You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Hi, I'm good morning to all of you all, and I'm Rajesh, and I'm joined by my team members, Shafi and Varki, who's our landscape consultant. The project is called Anandamana. Here, next, please. So when we initially, we just basically run through the concept and the actual design intervention and what the master plan really is. Next, please. So in terms of the concept, our reference, can you go forward? So we were thinking about, our reference was about inhabiting terrain in monsoon terrain, and how traditionally habitation has always been, located. If you look at the section below on high ground, and the low ground sort of accommodates different levels of wetness through the year. And what's interesting is that along the gradients between high and low ground, you have these sort of practices of cultivation, which are sort of seasonal and temporal in nature. So this is something which we referred to as, in terms of some idea of a reference to temporal landscapes. Next, please. And looking at probably what the evolution of this kind of the Rajakalave, the Nala itself, probably was a broad swale, which, of sort of low ground, and, typically there would be some kind of cultivation along the gradients and a variation in sort of water levels or wetness through the seasons. And, this has then been transformed as a part of the urban kind of intervention into a constricted sort of a hard channel, so basically you're trying to contain water. And so we question this approach of this hard channel approach, which actually constricts flows and is, part of the larger problem of flooding that we experience in our cities. And so what we propose is something really, working within the framework, is really an intervention with a sort of a stepped gradient, which, works within the framework, but that of what already exists, but also, accommodates possibilities of, variation in wetness and water levels over the year, but actually becomes an accessible kind of a space. Next, please. The other specific observation, besides all the normal stuff about the site, was right through this neighborhood, Kalyan Nagar, and actually in Bangalore, citizens have really gone out of their properties to cultivate and to garden. And this is very evident in our site all along Nala and even in the neighborhood itself. So there is this green thumb kind of instinct, which seems to be really strong. And then at the same time, you see at one end, you have the nurseries which are there. And of course, we have the broader context of, the totas and the Puvina totas and the flowers and even the commercial aspect, which, of flower selling and all that. So this was another sort of a reference point, and we were really thinking of the link between what we were talking about earlier, the gradient and cultivation, and maybe bringing these together into some kind of synthesis. Next, please. So we were really, can we, the question was, can you construct a sort of a pedestrian paradise, pedestrian friendly environment? That's just taken for granted that you want to go in that direction. But can one really create a pedestrian paradise with a vibrant, with sort of community gardens, and which also has, through these processes, an inbuilt resilience to floods? I mean, you get a broad picture of the, just to hold on to that a second, of the basically the way, we'll explain the details of the section as we go forward, but there's just a broad idea in terms of how these three things come together. Yeah, go ahead, next please. So the specific kind of intervention that we are doing, okay, we have some goals in mind. You're talking about productive landscapes, therefore, urban farming, community gardens. Then, of course, everybody wants more space available, friendly pedestrian, space for recreation. So you're talking about play areas, walking, plazas. And then, of course, at that intersection, there's the idea of including everybody, and, all the good practices, universal access, place for the vendors, communal market days, and of course, visibility, that's a very important part, making all urban spaces visible, gender and age friendly. Then, of course, mobility with an accent on, enhancing pedestrian sort of friendly networks. And, there's already a lot of, with Sensing Local and local residents have already been quite active in this area of really pushing, for pedestrian rights. And I think that one would like to build on that, creating systems of slow traffic with rationalized road widths, and of course, seamless movement across and around the low ground. And then, of course, with all this, there is a sort of hidden system which also looks at the ease of flow in kind of extreme conditions, porosity, recharge, holding tanks, etc. Next, please. So when you look at the existing section, you have this very sort of undifferentiated, kind of very wide road in terms of what is there, in terms of what it's servicing. And then if you have this, the fence around the nala, because by default, when you have a space which is inaccessible, which is the nala, the hard channel, invisible, it is prone to abuse. And then to prevent people from throwing things inside, you create an inaccessible zone around it. So pretty much you create the problem and then you expand the problem, and just make it more difficult for people. And actually what you're losing is space. So as you move forward, I mean, like if you kind of rethink that, hard division between high and low, and then actually look at it as a gradient and possibly an accessible stepped gradient, you create more space by rationalizing the road and parking. And then you sort of look at this possibility of this cultivation. And then as a last layer, you have the pedestrian walkways at two levels. You have an upper walkway, a lower walkway, and of course the bridge crossings, which sort of interweave the human sort of intervention with the landscape. Next, please. So we'll move forward to the actual design, and so the master plan. 1 second. Yeah, so you can go ahead. Yeah. So what you're really talking about is at the third cross, starting from left. I'll just quickly run through. You have the sort of a plaza, which is a communal plaza for events that could be temporary on particular days of the week, and you actually can continuing the paving across that area and creating space for vendors, and you actually could block that off on these Sunday days where actually you could sell the produce of your communal gardens. And then you have you have a series of sort of kunds which are along the low ground of the canal itself, which are located strategically where you have points at which the flows come in from the streets, because the streets effectively, the street network becoming the drain network, which actually kind of feeds the existing nala. And then of course, you extend the high ground, and actually retain parts of the old nala wall. So you're actually talking about opening up the nala and retaining parts of the wall and extending the high ground there. And then at these points, you have the bridge crossings, which happen, again, which are loosely connected with the street network. and pause platforms which happen along the way, along these extended sort of upper levels. And again, the connection, you have another step sort of water retention thing happening where that cross nala sort of comes and connects. And yeah, and then, we've actually looked at, being this idea of the temporal landscape that you can actually move down into the nala, and you have this sort of meandering path, which we call the path of bliss, which sort of winds its way through, this kind of cultivated landscape and gardens. These community gardens which occur. And if you look at how the sort of street section has been looked at, and you have the residential buildings, and then you leave a lane for parking, because everybody parks on the streets. These are smaller plots, and you really need to keep that parking. And then you rationalize the road width to a slow movement, 6 meter wide roadway, and so you gain space really for your pedestrian areas. And then you have the sort of so 8 feet for the walkway and 8.5 meters for the landscape area. And so that's how that section is sort of organized. Next, please. And then, of course, the planting would be organized, along, sort of graded according to, from dry to moist to wet species. And, if you have, obviously we're not going into details of that. Yes, can we move forward? And then, of course, we'll just go on, focus on individual parts. So if you look at the third cross intersection, and they're really talking about extending the paving there and actually creating a division. It's actually a very dangerous intersection because people sort of cut across diagonally in this area, and from the two sides of the of the nala. And so you're actually creating a division there, also trying to slow the traffic down. And then, of course, you provide space for the vendors and auto rickshaws and things like that. And this can be sort of blocked off on special events where you actually sell the community garden produce forward. And then, of course, this sort of seamless mobility. So you have this high-level mobility, which is connected to the street. And then you have the lower meander, and then, of course, the bridge crossings. You can also see some of the points at which water drains into this area. And then, of course, the lower path, which winds its way through these gardens with these pause kind of spots. So our approach has been as really that this is a stormwater drain, and there shouldn't be sewage going into it. And actually, I cross this nala every day for the last 20 years. And you actually, what you have is a trickle of some illegal sewage that comes in. And 99.9% of the year, there is no actually water in it. There is, other than the sewage, there is no actually stormwater flowing in it. So actually, even when it rises to what we've seen as the flood level, probably less than half of the existing nala, it actually happens only for a few hours. And the flooding that happens outside it is mainly because water is actually not able to flow into it. So it's actually should be looked at as an area which is accessible for 350 days a year. And then, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you could wrap up, that would be great.
Yeah. So we have a system of overflows and how the flood mitigation happens. Go ahead. And then, of course, so this is the path, maybe a little romantic, but as you descend into the space, you sort of the city disappears and the whole hustle and bustle, and you sort of enter sort of a liminal realm of a secret garden or a forest in the city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Mohan sir.
This time I'll wait for Vishwanath to go first, and then I don't have questions, but maybe a few comments.
Yeah, thanks, Rajesh. That's absolutely excellent. And I'd like to just spend some time there right now in this last photograph. Keep that going on this last slide. One or two hydrological issues, Rajesh. The thing is that why stormwater drains are made hardline now is because the runoff volumes have tremendously increased, and there's something called a scouring velocity, right? It has this tendency to take away silt and soil, and therefore, if you want stability of the surroundings, you need it to be hard. That's the sort of civil engineering design. But I think you just have to keep that in mind in terms of the velocities of flow. Like you pointed out, it's only during a few hours during the heavy rainy season, and it's also because other water is not allowed to come in, right? So that will have to be kept in mind in terms of the design. That's one thing. And you rightly pointed out that sewage is an issue that can be possibly handled very easily by linking it to the main sewage line itself, right? So that's a good point of it all. So broadly nothing, just that keep the hydrological status in mind when the design of the meander is put into place.
I mean, in fact, in our larger master plan, what we had, which is part of the submission, we had suggested a system where there was a, series of holding tanks along the, basically slowing the runoff, which leads up to the Nala 2. And so there's a system of retention and overflows. I mean, at a broad level. So, but yes, I recognize that is a very important point.
And just as an addition to what you now said, do try to understand the groundwater table and use the aquifers also to either balance out the stormwater drain or to feed it into the water body. Right? That's also an interesting proposition that you have in some of the side drains. Yeah, that's it from my side, Mohan.
Yeah, I mean, hydrological questions apart, I mean, what Vishnath said about either scoring or even the groundwater and things, and I'm sure there will be multiple other challenges that come into it. But I think the idea of reclaiming this as a public common that is varying in its temporal nature. It's not a fixed entity like a Maidan. It's not a fixed children's play area or anything that is static. I think that itself is a great way to conceptualize our public spaces rather than the labeled land use mapping that one does even for open space uses. I'm looking at it not just from the Nala perspective, but as a model that can actually take forward to look at all commons in the space. And yeah, there will be, I'm sure, more than technological challenges. I think there will be challenges of mindsets to say, why would you want me to walk in the Nala is the kind of question that one would be confronted with. But as long as one is not even thinking of them as a Nala to begin with, diverting the sewage is the easiest of the solutions that I think that actually frees up this very precious urban space to be used in so many different ways. And I think it's a great larger vision that one should definitely aim for, and not be held back by the practicalities, whether there is parking available, whether there's garbage collection happening here. I mean, those are all niggling problems that definitely need to be solved as one goes along. As a design approach in terms of looking at it as higher and lower ground, wet and dry, temporal in nature, I think it really captures the essence of what public spaces should be, especially in a city like ours. I'm really not even going to get into the technicalities or the hydrologies, because from the perspective of the larger concept, those actually become smaller issues that need to be tackled rather than highlighted in the process. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the proposal. I think it was really beautiful. I think definitely there is a need to kind of the project kind of lay up front that, hey, what do you want? Like, what do we want the reimagination to be? And I think that way it holds at the center of the proposal that, okay, it's about opening up this crevice that is there and really reclaiming it. And I think there's the single idea that's running through. I think some of these practical problems that the community is facing, and you are part of the community as well, they will definitely need to be addressed, but creating room for them can definitely be a thing that just has to be done, while putting in the center that, okay, we do want to enjoy this water, this blue and green landscape. And so all of these other measures, like I was just even thinking after the first proposal was done that, hey, it may not be enough to just put a dustbin for dog poop. You might actually have to look at, like, how do we solve for that problem through design? Like, does it mean we need a sand patch where dogs can go and pee and poop? Because if the community wants the dogs to be around. And so how do you solve it through design? So I think some of these, while they are menial issues, they will have to be a part of this proposal. But I think for me, what stands out here is that it is a joyous kind of a proposal where we would want to do in order to then make those hard changes on an everyday level. I think it really reminded me of Alipay, because Alipay does this. It has these multiple levels. It has staircases going down. Everyone who's visited it will actually, immediately Alipay comes to mind. And so this practicality of having people go into the Nala is already solved for. And if anyone has doubts in it, I think there's a great example to even understand what the challenges are. I was just wondering that, is there also some mapping that has been done or some kind of data that is there on throughout the year? How does the water level within the Rajakaluve kind of flux? I understand that the flooding is only happening for a few hours or days in a year, but where is the rest of the water line for most part?
Actually, it's not hard data. I would say that it's not that we have, but I cross the Nala every day, at least twice, and there's only a trickle at any given point. The only point where I've actually seen water gushing in it is when there's been this heavy rain, really heavy, incessant rain over, like you had in October, and then because water is unable to flow into the Nala itself, it's also collecting on the roads and creating this flood problem. And we have actually addressed some of those issues of opening up the ring road end and creating a larger collection tank, which is all there in our master plan, but yes, it doesn't, that's the whole point. It shouldn't even be called a canal. It doesn't have water, it just has water for some time, and that's our whole point actually.
There's just two other points that I just want to make for the sake of the rest of these projects as well, that I think there is some thinking that's gone here also about the way the edge of the road, which will still have vehicles on it for whatever speed they may be running on, and the green landscape. I think in this proposal, we were seeing, like, I noticed, I think in one of the first renders that was there, there's a little bit of a small wall that was there and somebody was sitting on it. I think it might be interesting in this, as the proposals get further on into implementation, to just think about that edge, because children are an important stakeholder in this place. And so there may be still a need for thinking about the safety of children from that edge perspective if we are expecting them to really occupy this and enjoy this space. And it might be that small thing that also becomes seating and also becomes other things. But there is this, the children as a stakeholder are a major sort of element. So I think it was, for me at least, that element kind of stood out, even though it's a very small detail, it did stand out as an important design consideration. It's not a flat thing, it's from the Rajakaluve to the road. The other thing that strikes me is that perhaps, like, the bridge in the center does, at least for me, it takes away a little bit from the water. And I wonder whether, if it doesn't sort of ruin the design too much, it may also be about, like in Alipay, you actually have the walkways on the side and the water is still the center of it. Because I think there's a reimagination of the connection to the city and the water that we have a very troubled relationship with water in general. So it may be still interesting to kind of keep your eye on the fact that, hey, there is water, there's a Rajakaluve, there's a lake up there, and there's water flowing downstream. So yeah, but thank you so much. I think it gives us a sense of a principles approach to doing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, we'll start with our last presentation, Team 889. If you could kindly come and share your presentation with us.
Sure, thank you. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So for the purpose of this presentation, I'll choose to keep my video off because my connection is a little weak. Hope that's okay. We'll be presenting a proposal titled 1 Mile, Rethinking Urban Commons. So we had heard the issues that were observed on site that were narrated by the organizing team. Over and above this, we also know that Bangalore has a public space crunch. The per capita open space is only 2.2 meters squared, and it is very less compared to the minimum of 10 meters squared. On top of this, we know that around 21% of the parks and playgrounds are inaccessible. We also know that Rajkalways in the city, which link the 200 odd lakes to each other, are in a very dismal condition. So based on this, we formulated two very important questions which helped us frame our vision and the strategies. The questions are, can neighborhood residential streets be reimagined as public spaces? And also, how should Rajkalway be treated to preserve and improve its ecology and of the lakes? So based on this, our vision is to reimagine the stretch that we call as 1 mile, because it is around 1.6 on both sides, 1.6 kilometers on both sides, as an ecologically sensitive, pedestrian and NMT-oriented shared street. And to achieve that, we have 8 key strategies in hand. So the first strategy we looked into was reducing the vehicular lanes. We know that currently there is a two-way movement. Currently there is a two-way movement on the 8th main east and west, the carriageway of roughly 6 meters in one side. We think a two-way movement is unnecessary because there is property only on one side, and also the place has a compact urban grid. We have crossroads happening every 130 or 52 meters, and so, which means vehicles can easily move counterclockwise to reach their desired destination. And hence we restructure the movement to make it a one-way street with 3.5 meter width, which allows contraflow movement of NMT and cyclists, thereby encouraging NMT services and cyclists more. We provided on-street parking on the side of the direction of the movement, along with emergency parking and PPUDO zones. So this is a visualization of the same, where you can clearly see the movement of private vehicles, the on-street parking spots, and also the contraflow movement, which is allowed for NMT and cyclists. The benefit that we think is that it will create more space for pedestrian activities and also avoid unnecessary parking on the Nala side. For the implementation, we think that this should be tested using tactical urbanism principles and then later be made into a permanent solution. The second strategy is an offshoot of the first strategy. Once we have reclaimed more space from vehicular lanes, an efficient restructuring is needed to increase the share of public space. So in the existing section that you see here, you can see that the only usable space is for people to walk, etc., is highlighted in orange. So it's a meager 2.1 on the left and 1.5 shoulder on the right. The other spaces are all locked up and are inaccessible. So in the proposed section, we see that it's clearly increased from to 5.1 meter on the property on the Nala side and around around 3 meter on the property side. Towards the edge of the public spaces, there is also a green strip of green, which acts as a bioswale and has a width of around 70 centimeter. The one-way carriageway is of 3.5 meter. You can clearly see in the image here of the area consumed by public spaces against the area that has been allocated for vehicles to move. We think this is a clear benefit. The clear benefit here is that there is an increase in the share of public space from 25 to 71, and that it makes the whole area not a vehicle-oriented street, but a people-oriented street. The implementation strategy remains the same as the previous one. Test it out first and then make it a permanent solution. For strategy 3, it involved creating a universally accessible public space with diverse opportunities on the space that was reclaimed from the vehicular lanes. We have shown the different typologies that are possible here within the stretch of that 5-meter width that is available to us now. We can have spaces for vending, we can have space for street gym, we can have spaces for kids play area, and also as seen and in this site presently, we can also have site for farming or gardening that can be taken up by the residents. We have not prescribed the final location of each of this function because it's a conceptual idea, but rather we have shown suggestive locations where they can function. The entire public realm is universally accessible with ramps to the bridges that have been widened, accessible with ramps with wheelchair-friendly bollard spacing towards a public realm, and also tactile paving for the visually challenged. So on the right, you can see an eye-level view of the different functions that can happen in this space. So we think that it's a very diverse function, providing spaces for children, to elderly, and to others. For the implementation, we think that the typologies, before placing it, it needs to be assessed by the need on the needs of the community, and then the intervention will be a phase-wise one. Now, in order to get children, elderly, and other groups to access the space, it is important that they are able to access them safely. And that's where the fourth strategy is important: reduce vehicular speeds. The current vehicular speeds on the streets, as observed, is around 40 to 45 km/h, which can be unsafe for humans in case of collision. And our strategy now here is to reduce speeds by design. So the strategies are: first, the surface treatments are changed to cobblestone or paver blocks on the carriageway. This will reduce the speed of the vehicles to an extent when compared to asphalt roads. The surface of the tabletops are also paver blocks, which are uniquely painted with thermoplastic paints to provide interest for the kids. Since the distance from this point towards the next junction is around 130 meters, it is possible that vehicles can take a higher speed on that stretch. Hence, a mid-block pinch point has been placed to achieve slower speeds. Likewise, gateways and junctions are also having tabletop. Hence, warning the vehicles to reduce speed as they approach it. We believe these strategies will reduce vehicular speed in the stretch from around 40 to 20, which will make it safer for people, especially for children and the elderly. Now, moving on to the strategy 5 is to preserve and improve the ecology. And so we have two components here. One is improving the ecology and improving the ecology of the Nala, and one is of the public realm that has been provided. So the strategies for the Nala are, we believe that the Nala should be kept open to sky as it is, in order for the water in the Nala to be healthy. Covering the Nala will prevent sunlight from reaching the water, and therefore it will not have oxygen. Hence, except for the portion where the bridge is widened, other places are all open to sky. We had observed on site that there is no sewage which is going on into the Nala in this stretch. But in case there will be a sewage interceptor line which will take the Nala and prevent it, will take the waste and prevent it from entering into the Nala. As the second strategy, we have also thought of introducing floating wetlands for phytoremediation. This will be an in situ treatment for improving the water quality. It will also reduce the mosquitoes in the area. We have also mentioned some of the species that can be used for this.
Team, I'm going to also request you to start wrapping up, please.
Yeah, sure. The other strategies for public realm are that it should have pervious pavements. It should have bioswales, which will also increase the water recharge. The next issue that we looked into was looking into tackling the issue of parking there. So we thought it should be done in a phase-wise manner, where in the first stage, we will provide on-street parking of 2 into 5 meter on-street parking slots for each household on a permit basis, that they can buy the parking slot for 5 to 10K per year. once the NMT services and NMT pedestrian-oriented streets are developed for first and last mile connectivity towards bus stands and towards the metro services, we will then, if people give up their parking spot, it can be changed into parklets. And so this is the final stage where we envision a zero on-street parking except for emergency and PPUDO zones, and all the parking will happen off-street. This is again the final strategy of linking the major roads, which will be developed for NMT services and pedestrian services towards the the public transport services. And as a final strategy, we have the strategy of ward-wise waste management, where we think that it is necessary to contain the treatment of waste within that ward itself. So we know that there is door-to-door collection, and we think that it should be enforced and enhanced so that the door-to-door collection of non-degradable waste is happening, and it is processed at a ward-wide center. Houses should be provided with bins for in-house organic treat disposal and manure reuse. Leaf composting should be integrated with the street design, and surveillance through cameras integrated with street lights should be in place in case of any misuse. So this is the final image of what we've achieved in the slide, where you can clearly see that the share of public space that has been created against the vehicular, and also the kind of life that is happening within the street. Just a final slide on the sectional view on the UG services that have been provided. So all the important the data will be on the property side, and there will be only electricity cables running underground on the Nala side. This is the view of the revamped bridge, which is universally accessible. And this is again a street level view.
Thank you, James. We would request the judges to ask the questions.
Yeah. So just for a comment, I think what you've done is nicely deconstructed the issues, the key issues that have emerged from the neighborhood conversations, problem identification, both by the locals as well as by outsiders, and then started to solve it out one by one, right? And so it's very nice that you've looked at the traffic plan, the parking space, and the parking alignments. Some of it may work, some of it may be challenging in terms of the cost that you're wanting to collect from the parking and all that. Those may be slightly problematic, but that's a separate issue that can be addressed. But you're looking at safety of children, you're looking at traffic mitigation and reducing speed. That's all fantastic. Very nice. I really liked it, including the solid waste management approach that you have thought through and what you're doing about it. My only problem with your selection is that you've left the drain itself with just floating wetlands, right? So I think you could pay more attention to the drain itself and try and see what could be done to enhance it, both visually and in terms of access. That would make it a bit more robust, your design. But otherwise, nicely done. And it's a nice local solution.
Thank you, sir. So our concern, and we acknowledge that a natural edge would be better, but we had to make do with the constraints of the site in terms of the street width available. So that is why we had chosen this option.
Yes. Yeah, that's a choice that you made. But one just wishes that a bit more design input would have gone in to try and see what more could be done with it.
Sure. Thank you.
Lokesh, sir,
actually, I like the proposal of converting this road space into the public space. That is a very good move. And by restricting the vehicular movement, that will definitely enhance the purpose of this development. And so we, like you have addressed most of the issues like controlling the speed and also safety of the children, solid waste management, like our Vishwanath sir mentioned. This is one of the good proposal, and I think it is a implementable proposal according to my knowledge. And the Raj Kalwe is concerned, and I think we need to do some like aeration of the we can introduce some aeration so that it gets purified frequently there itself, without investing much on that one, because it is a larger issue as far as the sewage flow in Rajkalves are concerned, and that is a totally different and big subject by itself, and BWSSB will be in a position to address this issue at the earliest. So with that, I think this should be a very good proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The other users, Mohan.
No, I have no comments at all.
I just want to say that I think there is some soul searching that's to be done here, because do we kind of want the Rajkalves to be as they are now, or do we want them to become something else? I think there's a bit of sort of strategizing and soul searching that these proposals give us, and I think this one is pretty much in line with, I think, the second or third proposal as well, which was the slightly more minimal, highly feasible solution, because it doesn't fundamentally alter things in that way. I do think it gives us a lot to think about in terms of like truly how much space is available. Like if you just did not intervene in the Rajkalve right now, and I'm putting that as a word right now, and if you were to kind of just shift the way reallocation of space between the right now, which is the whole road, but into like pavement, swales, and then what looks like to me is almost like a 4-meter road. Please correct me if I'm wrong. What is the width of the road at this moment?
So the our proposal, it is 3.5 meter carriage.
It's like one way. It's basically
one way.
Yeah. So I think this for me at least, it gives a lot of like possibilities to soul search. Like, okay, are we okay with this kind of a thing, and therefore gain so much more in terms of pedestrian access space? There's something to be done. The one thing that I think it also kind of does here is that, just like comparing to the proposals we just saw, is it underplays the role of, for me at least, the role of gardening and green in a more flamboyant way. Like right now, I think like if you were, it gives much more room to the openness. It actually tells you, hey, there's so much space. And I think this place invites both residents as well as visitors from the neighborhood. So you kind of need space to accommodate all these different users. There's so many people who run there. There's all of that. It kind of opens that up. So there is some advantage to that. But there's also this other cultural aspect of gardening that I think, at least to me personally, I found super fascinating. That, hey, houses don't have these gardens. They are actually, people are going out and building these home gardens out there. And it requires space for that expression to really take over. So perhaps it can always be added in your proposal, but to me at least, it really gives us the possibility to kind of rethink how much of like allocation we want to give to the road itself. And I also kind of really like the idea that, okay, I don't know if people would be open to really buying a parking spot, but it is giving you a little pause to say, hey, we take for granted that parking lot, like you can always park on your road. But is there like a co-management sort of like framework that actually becomes a part of the city? That, hey, don't take this kind of like space for granted, because you're willing to give free space to cars, but you're unwilling to invest in cycle lanes. Like what kind of fairness in a justice landscape is that? Like it makes no sense from a justice standpoint. So for me, maybe this is giving us some cues on how we can actually like make room for infrastructure like cycling and others through this process, and really tell people that, hey, don't take for granted that you can just use road for cars and that's it. Like you'll be able to get away with it. So I think that's quite interesting. Yeah, but I think like there's a lot of elements that kind of work for me as well here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what we're going to do now is we also have Santosh from the Stormwater Drains Department who has been listening in on the proposals. He's not queued in to comment at the moment as well. What we do now is we will get the jury to stay back for a little more to, just have a 10-minute discussion on the proposal. Aprajita, if you want to just thank.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Thank you so much, everyone. I think this has been a really exciting morning, and we've been tracking the comments on live chat as well. It seems people from the community have been listening into the proposals and they've left some comments there as well. We've taken those screenshots so that they also factored in when we are sort of judging that. But I think it's been really exciting, and we were just discussing on a group that, maybe a few months or like a year or whatever from now, it'll be great to visit this site and see some of this actually happen. So thank you so much again. What we'll do is we'll stop the recording for now and the teams can drop off. And if everyone, all the judges can, we'll also stop the live stream. And also just repeating that we will get back with the results 2 weeks from now, because we will go back to the community and, the recording, etc. will be shared.